Market Pulse by SC Securities and Daily FT. As usual, our effort is to bring you the expert insight for you to have a better pulse about the equity markets of Sri Lanka. And today, our focus is on an iconic conglomerate running by an iconic lady. And she is the first female CEO to head a public quoted conglomerate in Sri Lanka. Kasturi, welcome to Market Pulse.
Pleasure is mine. Nice to be here.
So to start off, Kasturi, you are the first female to give the leadership to a Sri Lankan conglomerate as a CEO. So how is your experience so far as the HEMAS CEO?
Yeah, I guess I had that dubious honor of being this CEO of a conglomerate, which is public quoted. I guess the nuance there is it was unlikely that a woman can handle multidisciplinary industries. It has been absolutely interesting because the last 3 years or 2.5 years has been interesting for the country. What I loved about it is the fact that it played to my strengths, which is I love challenges and chaos, and it brings out the best in me in terms of leadership to make choices, and it played to my strengths. So today we find HEMAS stronger than before. What was really not my comfort zone was this whole publicity and the fact that you're this first lady, and the expectation not from for the company, but mostly I guess the expectation of performance had a rub-off effect of what I leave as a legacy for the next future young aspiring women who want to achieve great or achieve a similar status. Because that was the outcry when I became a CEO. There was this young generation who was writing to me and saying, now we can dream big. And I owed it to them. That pressure was not something I liked. Now, 2.5 years later, I'm kind of okay. That's done and dusted, yeah.
But I should admit that I'm also one of them. So let's get into the business. And when we consider the HEMAS Group, the consumer brand segment must be challenging in a high inflation environment like now. But this segment represents about 30% revenue of the HEMAS Group. So how does this segment perform in the current economic conditions?
Yeah, consumer brands, by nature of it, is catering to consumers. When the consumers are going through challenges, it's a reflection of whether you're a product or service. It kind of reflects on that. At HEMAS, the consumer brands represent between 35 to 40% of our revenue, and it's we're in home and personal care and the learning business, which is our stationery. But the thing is, both our spaces in consumer brands are more resilient towards based on any economic shock or even a market contraction. It's a bit more resilient. And we had the added advantage of, say, stationery, we are the market leader, and home and personal care, we are one of the leaders in that. Having said that, from last year, we did see the market contracting, I think from the second quarter onwards, and we still see the contraction continuing, predominantly stemming from, I'm sure, from the impact of first the global commodity prices going up, B, the inflationary impact based on devaluation, all that. I think the latest somewhere in November was the impact of tax. So when the consumer is going through all that shock, we did see the contraction coming through. From HEMA's perspective, we did see contraction. However, we didn't contract as much as the market, which reflected in our share gain. So we were more competitive than the rest of our products or our services were more competitive. So in that context, I think we were a bit more resilient, and that took a lot in us making sure that we had our value proposition stronger, catering to the consumers' changing needs, and being a bit more agile. As a Sri Lankan company, we kind of relate a bit better to a consumer. So that way, we kind of weathered it, but from a market perspective, I don't see it seeing a growth on the demand per se. For the next 2 quarters, we would feel a sluggish market or consumption till the consumers kind of ease into all the pressures they see. Yeah.
Okay. But when we consider the healthcare sector, which is the largest contributor to the group revenue, we have seen that HEMAS is focusing quite a lot on innovation in this space. So can you tell us about what are the latest developments in the healthcare sector?
So being the leader in healthcare, whether it's pharmaceutical and now and hospitals, whether you manufacture or import, there's an obligation, right? And when we take a stance of giving quality products or service, how do you make it affordable? So the innovation comes into place. Innovation in terms of technology, innovation in terms of the sciences. So commitment when we put our plant in Morrison, and then that's the latest baby which has taken quite a bit of our capital out of our portfolio. But the fact that we were clear on what we offer to our consumers, even at the plant and the products we bring out at global quality standards, made sure that we choose what we bring in. So we have now launched our own brands. We were the first to launch an SGL2 product out here in Sri Lanka. That is the new age diabetic care. I'll avoid using molecule names so that it's simpler. But that has done phenomenally well. It's at global quality at a price which is less than what you pay an MNC, so it's at an affordable price. So we've also launched 3 more subsequently when we saw that success, again under our own brand. So we've been there's a hypertension product, there is a cardiovascular product, and then there's this antihistamine which you take for allergies, which we brought into the local market. So these, we've seen success. It's twofold. People now understand the quality and the efficacy of it. Secondly, of course, it's at affordable price point. So for us, the innovation there is choosing what to innovate, what to bring in. And of course, the processes are making sure the quality is maintained. But when you look at the healthcare side of it, today, one thing people struggle with is access to healthcare services and the cost of it. So there, it's a lot of digital being played. Digital used in terms of efficiencies, so that we use less people and the outcomes are predictable. Digital to make sure our patient data is taken in and we do the caregivers take better decisions. We've also launched our own home care model underpinned by technology. And I'm quite clear that they need to get these right building blocks in place because the end outcome for us, the goal is to give affordable quality care. And that doesn't happen the way if we do the same things the same way, purely because infrastructure is at a high cost these days. Interest rates are high. So affordability has to be, those are some things I can't control. Affordability and quality comes to things we can control. And that's technology and the way we think.
Okay. And Kasuri, now HEMAS Group's involvement in logistics, aviation and maritime operations, we see that it's kind of a lucrative but still a growing segment. So what does future stands for in these segments?
So people who have been following HEMAS know that we were in the entire logistics space. There was a divestment. That doesn't mean that we don't believe in that space. We do. And you're right, it is, it generates quite a bit of cash. But from when I step back and think, do we yet believe? And I think yes. Simply because 2 things. One is Sri Lanka, in today's context, we always had that fact that Sri Lanka could be a logistics or play in the logistics space. That's a USP or right to win kind of a theory for them. However, today's context where it's China plus 1 or just the fact that in the global context, this region is going to be playing a bigger part in terms of the growth, Sri Lanka has a chance to play that. So that space for us being there is important. Secondly, if you look at our businesses around, the core businesses is underpinned on logistics. We understand value chains, we understand the cost of value chains, understand how we operate in it. We need to convert those into a logistics business, and my ask and what we're looking at is a specific dish where we could compete, and I believe that's going to be growth for the country, and I wouldn't want to be left out of it.
And also, as you correctly mentioned previously, now Sri Lanka is facing a lot of challenges at the moment. To name a few, as you correctly mentioned, high interest rates, high corporate taxes, import restrictions, and forex liquidity issues. So, through all these challenges, how do you maneuver through? And do these things keep you awake at night?
I think it would have kept everybody awake at night. Yeah, I think the simple philosophy the whole team has taken up always is, let's focus on what we can control, right? Whether it's your personal life or whether it's at work. But HEMAS has a unique thing. While we went through these challenges, we also went through Easter Sunday, where we were knocked off the park, right? And which brought out the best in each and every employee here. So we've got a team which is, actually can describe them, they're a team which thinks on their feet. You don't need too much of hand holding as long as a directional view is given. So yes, you spoke about all of those factors, and being predominantly import driven and domestic oriented. Yes, we have a portfolio now which is growing in our exports, but we are predominantly exposed to domestic business. We were faced with all the challenges. I guess what helped us to focus on the right drivers, we made portfolio choices. We made capital choices, but most importantly, governance was there at the back of it, so that we were prepared ahead in terms of getting ready for whether it was the devaluation, whether it was the fuel, whether it was the inflationary pressures. And one tough thing for anybody, and I think that's a strength, is making certain choices and making a decision. And when you're used to it as a group, as a company, and every BU, it makes life simpler, because then you've made your choice, you're moving forward. The flip side of it is, during all this, when you're juggling so many balls around, I guess people tend to try, I want to hold everything. We made a choice of drop a few, let's hold these three and let's make those work. So when you fast track, I guess we've faced it, we've come out of it. But I think what I pride about the team is they've come out of it stronger, in terms of our portfolio, in terms of leaders as well.
You were talking about the team quite a lot, but at the moment, the massive scale of migration can be challenging for any business organization in Sri Lanka to find talent. So how do you face this challenge?
That's absolutely the most challenging risk we see now, from a country perspective and for HEMAS. But ideally what we do is, we have a philosophy of talent has to be identified, and we make sure we take care of them, but we understand what challenges they have, because everybody is unique. And today I'm seated here because the group understood my challenges in the 20 years and took care of whatever I had in order to retain me. So it's the same philosophy. So few things. One is retention, but the other thing is you have to make sure we have a culture where these young leaders can be empowered and grow. So we're focusing a lot on the culture change, because we would eventually retire, but the next set of leaders need to have the freedom to think creatively, bring in the innovation, and the freedom to work and collaborate. That I see in the next gen. They want the freedom to work together. Necessarily, when you are an older organization over 7 decades, the processes kind of are instilled, and it necessarily doesn't lend itself to collaboration by design. It has to be done through a culture change. So these are things which we are focusing, so that we give them an environment where they're happily working and giving outcomes. That's a big part of retention. Second one is, of course, you make sure we identify the right people, put them in the right roles, and make sure they succeed. The third aspect is we do invest in development. So this year and from the end of last year, even during challenging times, we did invest quite a bit in our leadership development.
Great. And now, it's not a secret that we are facing challenges as a country, but the IMF Extended Fund Facility got approved, and there are some economic indications of a recovery. So, in your view, what does future stands for Sri Lanka?
I think it was a great first step to get the IMF, EFF approved, because it came with the underlying certain transformational or certain criteria which had to be fulfilled in order to get approved, right? And most of those criteria were very tough and unpalatable for normal government. So the fact that they did that was positive for me. But remember, for us to come out of it, it's not the IMF grant or the tranches we get. It's also us changing fundamentally, understanding how we operate, because we need to get our revenues up. We need to get be more efficient. We need to get our trade balance up. That doesn't come just with the grant, it comes with reform. So I guess while I'm hopeful, the success would depend predominantly on understanding how the restructure, which means tough calls and implications to a lot, including businesses and the public. And how does that affect? How do we all react to it? Secondly, the biggest important thing I think is the political will. And for the political parties, irrespective of which color or party they belong to, color of the shirt, they put country first, and they agree that these are necessarily important for the country to come out of it. Ideally, we will never get this time again, right? One is from the IMF, from the crisis point, we have an opportunity to make tough decisions and make the right decisions. Secondly, from a global point of view, this region is having growth. So we should be doing this and getting onto the growth wagon and thinking out of the box. The third aspect, I think, after the politicians is, I guess we need to take this opportunity to eliminate corruption and bring institutions which are independent, run by civil servants who are qualified to do it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. A country fundamentally won't again sustain this kind of change. So for me, I'm looking for a sustained way of growing, getting out of it. For me, if those three are not done, whether you get the extended funding or not, doesn't matter.
Everybody has to do their part.
We all have to, and we make sacrifices, but sometimes this too shall pass if you do the right thing.
And also considering now, HEMAS is a preferred stock among foreign investors. We have seen that in the past. So in your perspective, how does the foreign investors would react now in terms of investing into HEMAS or investing into the capital markets in general?
So you're right. I think the foreign investors historically have taken a beating in the last 1 year, but we've seen now an increased interest and taking from our HEMAS point of view, I've seen the stock being taken. And one thing I hear from them is the governance part of it. So right, you can see that they're coming in, dipping their toes in, they're coming with the stocks which are governed better. But from a country perspective, I think while for the capital markets truly to open up and to attract proper investment in FDIs through the capital markets, they need to do more than this. It's not the rupee being devalued, make it a cheap stock. It is, they would want confidence in how the business operates. So the transparency and ease of doing business is important. I'm sure they look at the World Corruption Index as well in terms of how stable or how the country has reformed. And these right signals should be sent out so that they have confidence that these changes and reforms we're doing are really the right things and they're going to be sustainable. So unless we do those, I don't think the capital markets will see the increase in the activity the way we want to.
Okay, so finally, what are your plans for HEMAS in the near future? What can the shareholders really expect in the near future? Do you have any plans of acquisitions or expansions down the horizon? How does things look?
So the investors would have seen that some of our businesses have started doing some new stuff and relevant to the consumer. While that goes, I must be honest, we would be actively looking at some of the acquisitions in the core space as well as spaces we are not very familiar with, as long as we know we have a capability and a right to win there. There has been and there will be continuing to do more in the international space. The regional presence, especially in the stationery business and consumer brands, has increased. So that will be focused and developed. We found that even though we never looked at it before, that we really do find that there are things we can compete with and win and be relevant to certain customers there. So that would be a place they can expect more happening in the region. Yeah.
That sounds very great, and I think the shareholders who are watching would be delighted on that. And thank you very much, Kasturi, for finding time on your busy schedule and accepting our invitation. I'm truly honored to have you with us on our program.
Pleasure was all mine. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for watching Market Pulse, and we will be back soon with another exciting episode. Thank you.